A portion of this video is sponsored by Holonaut with their Lark Max 2 wireless lav microphone system. More from them later on in this video.
Yo, what is good people? Ben from Lover of Tech, and we are back with another video. This time, camera comparison. Oppo Find X9 Pro versus the Galaxy S25 Ultra versus the iPhone 17 Pro Max. We are pretty much going to be testing everything when it comes to the pictures and videos in daylight and low light. So definitely sit back, relax. Let's get into this camera comparison. Okay, let's kick things off with this definitive camera comparison between the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We're going to be pretty much blitzing through every single different shooting scenario that we can as possible, testing the daylight and low light performance between these flagship cameras. So definitely watch this at the highest resolution at 4K and in 60 FPS, especially when we get to the video section. Buckle up, we're pretty much going to be going through this one. It's going to be definitive, in-depth, fast-firing, and quick. Let's start with the daytime pictures, starting from the outside and working our way in with the ultra-wide. Let's look at the images with me in a frame as the subject. And with the ultra-wide, you can pretty much see here that they all do good. Now, for a true ultra-wide perspective, I've still got to give it to the iPhone. It does give a truer ultra-wide perspective and field of view compared to the Oppo and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I would say in terms of the colors, I do like what I'm seeing here on Oppo. All of them are great in their own right, but I think Oppo strikes it well. Maybe the only thing I can critique the Oppo is that the highlights on the skin are a bit blown out. I wouldn't say blown out, maybe slightly a tad bit more, whereas the iPhone balances it out, but the detail is there on the Oppo, and the Samsung is also doing a good job. Now, when we move over to the 1X main wide sensor, again, pound for pound, things are pretty much consistent as we go through. I definitely like the colors that I'm seeing on the Oppo. It really comes in through nice. A bit toned down and muted on the Samsung, whereas the colors for the environment are a little bit vibrant on the iPhone when I look at the clothes that I'm wearing, but I think in terms of striking the balance was the Oppo. Maybe the highlights on my skin are slightly higher and they're better balanced on the iPhone, so take that into consideration. Let's go into 2X, which is doing a digital crop. You will see that I will put crop versus zoom when it's using this dedicated telephoto zoom lens compared to when it's doing an in-sensor crop on a particular sensor. In this particular case, again, very consistent. One thing I appreciate is that the color consistency across these devices as we're going through stays the same. Again, great detail on the Oppo, and also what we're seeing here with what we're getting on the iPhone. The Samsung does look a bit softer than I like, but again, in consideration, I do like the balance of the colors, but again, maybe the highlights on the skin is a tad bit higher on the Oppo than I would like, where it's a bit more balanced on the iPhone. Now, let's go into the 3X zoom mode. Now, Oppo have changed things. They do have just a single dedicated 200 megapixel 3X zoom, but it's a very, very large sensor with a large pixel pitch or pixel size when it comes to what each of the individual pixels are before it starts binning down. Now, what we have here is really indicative of what we're seeing. Now, 3X is still doing a digital crop on iPhone, so that's definitely the softest. Samsung is still using that 3X dedicated 10 megapixel sensor. Honestly, I cannot wait for them to get rid of this 10 megapixel sensor. No Pro or Ultra phone at this price point should be having low resolution sensors at the back, and I'm going to stand on that as we keep going. Now, when we move over to the 4X zoom, this is now using the dedicated telephoto zoom on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. The Oppo is doing a slight crop on the 3X, and of course, we're doing a slight crop on the 3X 10 megapixels on the S25 Ultra. Definitely things are pound for pound for the iPhone and the Oppo. I do like the iPhone in this particular situation, especially when it comes to managing the highlights on my skin, whereas it starts to blow out just a little bit. I wouldn't say blow out, maybe that's a bit too extreme on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, but the colors as well do work a bit better on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Now, let's stretch it a bit further. 5X telephoto, this is where the dedicated telephoto zoom on the S25 Ultra kicks in, whereas we're still doing a slight crop on a 3X on the Oppo and a slight crop on a 4X on the iPhone. And I'll be honest with you, the detail and sharpness is there on the Samsung, but it just looks whitewashed and it just doesn't look as pleasing as what I'm seeing on the Oppo and the iPhone. I would say overall, I like the Oppo. This particular shot, it really does take it best for me. Now, let's go over to 6X. Now, 6X is where you'll see an in-sensor crop from 3X to 6X on the camera UI for the Oppo Find X9 Pro. And it does a great job. I think next to what we're seeing on the iPhone, they're the two that I really like. Again, the highlights on the skin management does feel better for me on the iPhone in this particular situation, whereas the overall color balance is nicer on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. You know, for me personally, the Galaxy S25 Ultra isn't really doing much to really excite me here. Now let's go over to 8x. 8x is where on the camera UI for the iPhone, you are seeing the in-sensor crop from 4x to 8x, hence why we're matching it up. So this should have better processing, ideally on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, but of course, that larger than life 200 megapixel sensor on the Oppo Find X9 Pro is really telling of how really good it is to have that now as a replacement. So I like what Oppo are doing there. I really think they have the better balance out of the two, but obviously the iPhone holds up. And again, the Galaxy S25 Ultra, the balance of the colors, yeah, not really much for me in this particular situation. Let's go to 10x maximum on myself. And again, same consistency as we're going through. I really do like what I'm seeing between the Oppo and the iPhone. And I think overall, in terms of the colors, the Oppo does take it. But highlight management on the skin, I've got to give it to the iPhone in this particular situation. It's done a great job.
Okay, quick pause in today's camera showdown, because if you've wondered why my voice has sounded clean and consistent throughout, that's all thanks to the HoloLens Lark Max 2 wireless microphone. Let me tell you what makes this thing such a win. First of all, it's feather light. Each transmitter weighs just 14 grams and its clever hover clip snaps onto your collar fast and stays put. No weird sag or bulky magnet in sight. Battery life. Each unit runs around 11 hours without noise cancelling on, but a compact charging case gives you a whopping 36 hours total runtime, so you can film all day and then some without panicking over the power. And the audio's not just safe, but it's smart. You get 32-bit flow internal recording as a backup, so even if the camera glitches, the sound is safe, and full chain 32-bit wireless transmission means studio-grade clarity straight into your footage, which is very good for future compatibility for cameras that support it. There's a clever optional hot shoe adapter that connects directly to the MI shoe, allowing for a clean setup with no wires to your camera when it's supported. Range isn't an issue either. It's rated up to 340 meters line of sight with a robust 2.4 gigahertz frequency hopping and ultra low latency under 20 milliseconds. Seriously, solid even in signal dense spots. Plus, the receiver controller on the camera is smart with automatic gain control with 3 preset levels, high, medium, low, which keeps your audio balanced and distortion free without fiddling during shooting. Plus, you have the ability to wirelessly monitor your audio with the optional wireless earphones. So yeah, if you want drama-free pro-grade audio, then the Lark Max 2 is the one to get. Check the link in the description below for where you can get the Lark Max 2 for yourself, and thank you to HoloLens for sponsoring a portion of this video. Now, back to the camera comparison.
Now, one of the main things about the Oppo Find X9 Pro's camera system is the fact that the main 50 megapixel sensor natively in most conditions actually takes 50 megapixel native JPEGs. Now, we know with the iPhone, this is one of the biggest upgrades that they had a couple of years ago, where natively it takes 24 megapixel JPEGs. But of course, depending on the speed and the pacing of how you're taking the pictures and the lighting conditions, it will still bin down to 12 megapixels. Now, with the Oppo, it does bin down to either 26 megapixels or 12 megapixels, but in the perfect lighting conditions and obviously the speed of taking it, it does take native 50 megapixel JPEGs, which is great. That's without having to go into the high resolution shooter mode. Now, there's also some considerations here. There is a 4K live photo motion feature. Now, this is great because, again, this is one of the first few phones to be able to do this. But when you're in that mode, it caps the shooting resolution up to 26 megapixels. I noticed when I did a first round of the pictures of me in the frame as a subject, and then I noticed that once the 4K live video feature was actually on, it capped it at that 26 megapixels. So I would highly recommend, if you want the highest resolutions natively without having to go into the high resolution mode, disable the 4K live video feature for taking pictures, and then you are pretty much fired to go. Let's move over to the portrait mode images, and this is looking very interesting in a correct daylight setting. And again, at this time of year, getting this type of weather in the UK is very rare and very hard. It's nothing but rain, dark clouds and gray. So we're really lucky here to get this type of weather. Now we're looking at what we're seeing here. All of them honestly do a great job. The reason why I pose the way I pose in these portrait mode images with the gaps around my arms is to really see if it's able to match and capture the blur in between the gaps on my arms, and all of them do a great job. The edge detection around my head is great. Again, I don't have that much hair, but this is indicative of the situation where around my facial hair, does it really capture it well? And it does across all of them. Really, it's just down to your likeness of what you like in the overall image. I like what I'm seeing on the Oppo. And yeah, it really balances well. And again, I would say the highlights management around the skin is really nicely done on the iPhone. And the S25 Ultra, not doing bad, but it feels a little bit whitewashed and a bit muted compared to the others. Now let's go over to the 2x crop mode. Again, very consistent. In terms of the image itself, it does look a little bit softer on the Oppo, whereas the iPhone maintains a good level of sharpness and detail. But again, really just focusing on the portrait mode performance. All of them do a great job. I would say the Oppo and the Samsung outright do the best. There is some bits missing around the left side of my hoodie when it comes to the iPhone, but I'm picking hairs here, and that's the only way to really stand out when it comes to these portrait mode images. Now let's go over to the 3x as well as the 4x equivalent mode for the iPhone and the Oppo and the Samsung. And again, things are pretty much looking good. The Oppo just looks brilliant. Things look a bit fuzzy around my head when it comes to the iPhone, but again, it does make it feel artificial in this particular situation. It's difficult with the autumn leaves around, but I think Oppo overall does the best job here. Now the Samsung does allow you to shoot it in the 5x mode, which as expected for a flagship phone. We've done many camera comparisons with the S25 Ultra throughout the year, so definitely check all of them out. The color change is something I wasn't expecting compared to the previous 3x, but again, this is what we have. Great detail. The edge detection is good around my head and everything, so I'm very pleased with this one. And of course, you've got that flexibility of range at 1x, 2x, 3x, and 5x on the Samsung. Let's take a look at the dedicated high resolution modes for JPEGs on these devices, starting with the ultra wide. And again, this is the best conditions to use the high resolution mode. Do not use it at nighttime, only in daytime when there's perfect lighting conditions like this. Clear skies, the sun is out, shining on your subject in the direction that you want to be taking it for, obviously people in the frame like myself, as well as landscape images. And in this particular situation, all of them do a great job offering that. Let's go to the 1x. And of course, the 1x, you've got the 50 megapixels and a 48 megapixels consideration for the iPhone 17 Pro Max, the Oppo, and the Samsung. And again, this gives you that flexibility to punch in and crop if you need to. Great detail, and the dynamic range really holds up across all of them. And then when we go into the 4x and the 3x respectively, this is what we're getting between the Oppo and the iPhone. Great resolution and detail there. I really like what I'm seeing on the Oppo. It looks good. Now the Samsung is 5x because again, that 3x 10 megapixels, it can't do high resolution, and I really hope Samsung get rid of that sensor and lens altogether. It's so outdated and it's just not needed on an Ultra phone in my personal opinion. Let's look at some of the flexibility and considerations that we've got for the super high resolution modes. Now the Oppo does have a 200 megapixel zoom tele sensor, and you can see that in terms of the highlights, it's changed a bit. If you look at the whites and the highlights around my head with the building behind, it does blow out a bit. So you can see that there is a slight hit to dynamic range here. So take that into consideration. Although this is the best condition, processing, file size, dynamic range can potentially take a hit when it comes to this particular situation. Now, when we go over to the Samsung, their main sensor is actually 200 megapixels. And again, this is the best consideration and time to use it, but consider the file size as well as the processing time and potentially a hit to colors and dynamic range. But again, you get that resolution and detail if you really need to pop in and use it. So that is the consideration of how they're using the high resolution sensors across the board. Let's flip to the front facing camera for these devices and take some selfies. And what's going to be interesting to see is the implementation and the feature sets that you have with the front facing camera for these flagship devices. And I have to say, what Apple have done with using a square sensor at 18 megapixels and how it's able to crop and take horizontal and vertical pictures without having to change the physical orientation of the phone, game changer. Every manufacturer needs to jump onto this, but it still does some weird things to consider. But in this particular situation here, all of them actually did an okay job. It's really hard to pick which one I like. I kind of like the overall color and look of the iPhone for the whole picture and the environment, but I do like what I'm seeing in terms of the field of view, the colors, overall that I'm seeing on me as a person for the Oppo, but the environment and the scene doesn't really look that nice. The field of view is slightly less on the S25 Ultra and it blows out just a little bit. It looks a bit mucky in my personal opinion, but again, this is what we're pretty much getting on all of them. Now, when it comes to the dedicated portrait mode, the iPhone still does this weird thing is when you go into the dedicated portrait mode, it heavily crops in and reduces your field of view. I really don't understand why Apple does this, and I'm going to show you the best way to actually take portrait mode pictures for your selfies. Do not use the dedicated portrait mode on an iPhone. You lose too much resolution and field of view. The image becomes too soft. Now, the performance is good overall on all of them. I really like what I'm seeing. There's no issues in terms of the edge detection. And the colors, it just depends on what you like out of them. Again, the overall colors that I'm seeing in the iPhone, I really like, but I do like what I'm seeing with the colors of me as a person. But the highlights on my skin could be better controlled on the Oppo. And the field of view loss, you can already see that the Galaxy S25 Ultra is kind of now stepping into a generation behind in terms of the field of view, the details of the features. So take that into consideration. Now, one thing we do get with the Oppo Find X9 Pro is a high resolution 50 megapixel sensor. Now, what's great about it with the selfie is that it does allow you to actually use the full 50 megapixels, which is great to see. So again, making and justifying why it's a pro device, high resolution on all the sensors, including the selfie. I really love this, and I really like that consideration. You can utilize that. Now, one of the things about the iPhone 17 Pro Max that I just love is the square selfie sensor. This is actually a horizontal selfie taking, but look, the field of view is pretty much the same as the others, and the physical orientation of the phone is the same. It's vertical, but here, the next image shows you that this is the horizontal image all the way. And if you look at the shadow on the left side, you can see that the orientation of all three phones are vertical, but that's a horizontal image. I promise you, once I get around to editing my iPhone 17 Pro Max day in a live video, which definitely go like, subscribe, and turn the notifications so you don't miss those type of real world out there usage of the phones outside of the real world and the controlled extreme situations that I use to test these phones when it comes to battery, charging, speed, performance, as well as the camera. My goodness, every manufacturer needs to put a square selfie sensor on their phones. And in fact, I'm hoping for the day all the cameras on the back of these smartphones are also square so that we don't have to physically change the orientation to do widescreen as well as obviously vertical. Yeah, I love this about the iPhone. My favorite selfie implementation all the way through. Now, when it comes to the lighting situation that we have here for portrait mode, we can pretty much see, like I said to you, you've got that benefit of being able to hold it in the same orientation with the portrait mode as well, and get a widescreen portrait mode image. It's just great to see. Now, when it comes to the portrait mode, like I said, the best thing to do is take a normal picture. Normal picture. Do not use the dedicated portrait mode image mode that you've got there. Then you're going to see the f-stop italic button on the left side. Press that, and that's when you're able to get the portrait mode live and direct in there. You can also change it after you take a normal picture. If it captures all the metadata, you're able to change it to a portrait mode image. You gain all the resolution and the field of view. So that's the best way. The dedicated portrait mode, especially for the selfie, not a good one to use in my personal opinion. Now, this backlit situation with the selfie was just an opportunity to test. I don't usually always get this opportunity, and I would say that the iPhone managed it really well next to the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Overall, I think the Oppo and iPhone did a great job. The Samsung really struggled on this particular one, and of course with the portrait mode, like I said, you lose the field of view and the crop on there, which is just insane. So definitely take a normal picture and turn it into a portrait mode image after that. And of course, one of the things I love is being able to take these horizontal selfies in the same vertical orientation. The iPhone just does a great job here. I just love the selfie implementation, and it's low-key a game changer. And I don't use the term, I really try not to use this term too much, but it really is for usability. And I think it's gonna get downplayed because it's Apple, but I really gotta give Apple their props for this selfie implementation, in my humble and personal opinion. Now, let's look at the minimum focusing shots and macro. Now, this is all from the main wide sensor from these cameras. Now, of course, we're looking at the headband logo for Naruto here on this pop stick, and the iPhone and the Oppo do not really have a great minimum focusing on a main wide sensor, whereas the Galaxy S25 Ultra, yeah, it really does let you get really close with the main wide sensor before needing to activate macro mode. And that is great if you want that natural background blur, depth of field look, larger than life sensor from the main wide. Because when you go slightly further, this is where it comes completely out of focus. So yeah, minimum focusing on a main wide sensor is best experience on the S25 Ultra compared to the Oppo and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. When you activate the macro mode, this is where you benefit from that really close minimum focusing. And of course, it's really hard to do it because most of them are doing it on the ultra wide. But again, all of them allow you to get up close and personal. And yeah, all of them do a great job in that personal use of the macro mode. But yeah, this is where macro mode is really useful when you want to get really up close and personal and get maximum detail. Let's look at some landscape images with these flagship devices. And of course, starting from the outside, I'm working our way in with the ultra wide. And as you can see with the iPhone, it does give you a true ultra wide perspective, which I really appreciate. Overall, what we're seeing in terms of the colors and details, this is really well done with all these devices. So no issues here, very consistent. We go to the main 1X, of course, great detail. And I really like the shadow detail that you're getting lifted out of the Oppo compared to the others as well. How it manages the light is a lot more subtle as well. But some might prefer that you'll see more of the light casting on the building and the bricks from the iPhone. So really take that into consideration with what we're seeing here. And of course, there's a lot of light changes and movement when I'm switching between the cameras as I'm shooting systematically between all of them. So take that into account. Going into the 2X crop mode, again, great detail and processing on all of them. I really like the shadow detail being lifted in the trees in the foreground personally for me. But again, you might like the more contrasty look to the Samsung, but I feel like it crushes the blacks in the shadows too much. In my personal opinion, I do like what I'm seeing on the Oppo, then followed by the iPhone. Let's go over to the 3X crop mode versus the zoom mode that we're seeing on the iPhone compared to the Oppo. Again, if you see the labeling where it says zoom, it is using a dedicated telephoto on that camera. And of course, in this particular situation, it's the Oppo Find X9 Pro all the way through. Now, let's go to the 4X zoom mode, which is now optically favoring what we're seeing on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. And the iPhone claws it back, does a great job. It manages it with the detail of the sky well, but I do like the overall colors that I'm seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro and the Samsung in this particular situation. Now, let's go to the 5X crop mode. 5X dedicated zoom on the Samsung. And again, it's doing a decent job, but I was expecting a bit more out of it, but yeah, great detail overall and no particular issues there. Now, let's go into the 6X crop mode, which is doing an in-sensor crop from the 3X to the 6X on the Oppo, and of course, just matching it to the others as well. And again, this particular situation, I have to say, I kind of like what I'm seeing more on the iPhone in this particular situation, especially in terms of the detail that is preserved on the cross at the top. And yeah, that is pretty much the landscape images for these particular ones here. Now let's take a look at the high resolution modes for these landscape shots. And again, starting from the ultra wide, this particular situation, I have to give it to the iPhone and the Samsung. They really do a good job. And I feel like in terms of the light and the highlight management on the building bricks, the Oppo really blows it out, and it didn't do a good job in this particular situation. So I've got to give it to the Samsung and the iPhone, but I do prefer what I'm seeing on the iPhone. Let's go over to the 1X, and yeah, things do claw back. The Oppo is doing the best job here, which is what we love to see. That new 50 megapixel main sensor is doing a great job out of all of them for the high resolution modes. Now, let's go into the 3X mode where we've got 50 megapixels on the Oppo, 4X is 48 megapixels on the iPhone, and then the 5X is 50 megapixels on the S25 Ultra. And again, I like what I'm seeing on all of them. The Oppo does do a great job in terms of the detail preserved overall, which is great to see, as well as, of course, the dynamic range and the shadows in the foreground. Now, again, the consideration of the high resolution 200 megapixel mode that you have on a 3X, things are consistent in this particular situation, not much loss in dynamic range, so that's great to see. And again, this is pretty much one of the best scenarios to use it. You might want a bit more natural light to come into play to really help here. And of course, the 200 megapixel sensor resolution on a main wide sensor for the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and that is the benefit that you have here. But again, consider the dynamic range and the shadow detail loss, and also the file size and the processing time. But yeah, these are the high resolution modes for this particular shooting scenario. Now, this next phase of the landscape images is really to showcase the super extended reach and zoom modes that you get on these flagship cameras and how they top up through the range and how they perform. Of course, let's start from the outside and work our way in ultra wide. Looking at the landscape images here, I definitely like what I'm seeing on Oppo, but you see, some might say that the color balance on the Galaxy S25 Ultra is much better balanced in terms of the gradient to the sky and also the foliage of the grass as well. So I kind of like what I'm seeing on the Samsung here with the ultra wide. Let's go to the One X. Again, stays consistent. The iPhone feels a bit more balanced and neutral, but again, there's a bit more vibe and vibrancy that you've seen on the Oppo. In this particular situation, I do like what I'm seeing on the Oppo. Now, 2X crop mode. Again, we're starting to extend as we're going through now. Consistent all the way through to pretty much be the same, no different across the board. I like what I'm seeing on all of them. Great detail and processing in this particular situation. Let's go over to the 3X zoom mode. This is optically favoring what we're seeing on the Oppo and the Samsung, still doing a crop on the One X on the iPhone. Again, it's the Oppo all the way through, then the S25 Ultra, and then the iPhone. Now, let's go into the 4X mode. This is now optically favoring what we're seeing on the iPhone. And of course, we're doing a crop on a 3X for both the Oppo and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. And again, the iPhone really does improve, but I do like the overall colors that we're seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, as well as the detail as well. That 200 megapixel large sensor is really coming in clutch. Now, let's go over to the 5X, which is optically now favoring what we're seeing on the S25 Ultra. And of course, all of them do a great job. I do feel like things are still a little bit softer than I would like on the Samsung. And when it comes to the detail overall from what we're seeing, things do hold up well on the Oppo. So yeah, it seems like this new 3X sensor is just doing God's work when it comes to the processing with the Hasselblad engine, and also what they're doing with the ISP with the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 chipset. Really good job here when it comes to what Oppo are doing. Now, let's extend things further. Let's go to 6X, and of course, things are really starting to show its light in what we're seeing. Again, it's Oppo all the way through in this particular one, is doing a great job. The others are holding up really well, but all things considered, I like the overall balance of the colors and also the light detail that we're seeing on the Oppo. Now, let's go over to the 8X, which is obviously doing an instance of crop from the 4X on the iPhone, so we're matching it there. And the iPhone does process and do things really well. But of course, it's going for a much more brighter looking image. I like the more contrasty look on the Oppo. This situation here between the iPhone and the Oppo is what I'm really liking. The Samsung is doing a great job, but it feels a bit washed out. And again, I know people are always going to come after me in the comments. Am I wiping the lenses? I always say, follow me on Instagram, because I do a lot of my behind the scenes there, and I always show me wiping the lenses over and over, and I really take time here. I've done these definitive camera comparisons for years now. This ain't my first rodeo. I know exactly how to take care of these camera lenses and the consideration that takes to make sure that I'm always getting the best images across the board. It's just what we're getting on a Samsung, so I don't know, take with that what you want. Let's go to 10X. Now we're pushing it further in terms of the extended zoom, and of course, in terms of the detail on the bricks and the colors, I like what I'm seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, 30X, okay, things are a bit shaky here. The S25 Ultra didn't do much of a great job, and I tried over and over again. Again, maybe the rush of taking the pictures was coming into play, but overall, I'm seeing what I'm liking here on the Oppo. We'll go to the 50X, and of course, the iPhone does top out at 40X maximum. This particular situation, yeah, you're not really dependent on these phones to be doing anything magical. It's all AI processing as we're going through. Now, we go to the maximum 120X on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, as well as 100X on the Samsung. You're not going to be using any of these. You can't see any of the text and stuff. So yeah, just take that into consideration. Now, there is one thing to remember, that the Oppo Find X9 Pro does have a teleconverter system that you can actually put on there, and it's really, really audacious in how it clips on, and it does block out the main and the ultra wide sensor. It uses the 200 megapixel sensor. There's a dedicated mode on there, and for situations like this is where it's really going to shine. I didn't have it in time to showcase it, so definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm going to be posting up some content and also some short form stuff on YouTube as well around using the teleconverter kit for the Oppo Find X9 Pro. This is where, again, it showcases that it is a pro device with these extended photography and video features that you can use, and really taking advantage of the Hasselblad engine, as well as, of course, that 200 megapixel larger than life 3X sensor. Let's turn off the lights in here and look at some low light images between the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, avid watchers of my definitive camera comparisons know that when it comes to the low light images, I do sequence them differently. But if this is actually the first time that you've come across my channel when it comes to doing these camera comparisons, you appreciate the much more detailed approach that we have after these tests, then be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos on the Lover of Tech channel, especially when it comes to our definitive camera comparisons. Road to 100,000 subscribers is still on the table for 2025. It only takes one video doing really well to make it happen, and with your support and help, we can make it happen. When it comes to our low light images, what we try and do is take them without night mode on, then with night mode on, and then with flash where applicable. Now, the reason why is to show the different image quality between the three and also account for the capturing speed experience. Night mode is great, but it is using computational photography with long exposure. And with things like light bleed and motion, night mode might not be the best, where some cases not using night mode actually works out to be best. And the other way is also true, where using a flash is also probably a better alternative. So I like to show all three. Again, as we do, let's start from the outside and work our way in, starting with the ultra wide with me in the frame as the subject. No night mode. And of course, in this particular situation, man, I've got to give it to the Oppo. I've done many camera comparisons with the iPhone as well as the Galaxy S25 Ultra, especially with the S25 Ultra since the beginning of January till now. When it comes to night mode without the ultra wide, using that, it's just not the one, and the Oppo is the one that's really shining here, so gotta give it to the Oppo. Let's go to the main 1x sensor, and in this particular situation, all of them hold up well. The S25 Ultra not so much. It's definitely between the iPhone and the Oppo, and again, I would say that the highlights around my skin on the Oppo is just a bit out compared to what I'm seeing on the iPhone. So I do kind of like the iPhone here, but obviously the exposure and the brightness and the detail is really good on the Oppo. 2x crop on all of them. Again, really soft image on the S25 Ultra, so I think it's out of the game with this one. It's really in between the iPhone and the Oppo. The overall colors and the look on the iPhone is definitely preferred, whereas the colors kind of just shift a little bit on the Oppo, and the highlights on my skin not as well controlled as I would like. Let's go into the 3x zoom mode. Again, for me, it's the Oppo all the way through. That 3x sensor on the S25 Ultra has really got to go. Now, obviously, what's good is that with the camera assistant, you can actually disable the feature where it auto switches the lenses for you. If it's the 3x that's been selected on the S25 Ultra, that is the 3x that's being used. And obviously, that's a camera assistant extension from Goodlock in the Galaxy store that's done there. Again, Samsung, you've got to get rid of this 10 megapixel 3x ASAP. It is the Oppo Find X9 Pro that is winning all the way through for this particular one. Let's move over to the 4x crop and zoom mode, which is favoring what we're seeing on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. And again, with the iPhone, there isn't any way to really control whether you're using a dedicated zoom or not. So this is probably still doing a crop and a main 1x sensor because it feels like that is the best option in low light. Apple, you really got to give us control over this particular situation where you've got these high resolution, larger sensors for the ultra wide, and the 4x. Let us use it now. Gone are the days where you need to be doing this. So again, this is one duck that I've still got to give the Oppo for winning this one. Let's go over to the 5x zoom mode. Again, that is definitely using a 5x on the S25 Ultra because that Samsung does allow you to toggle that feature on to stop it from lens switching and staying on the 1x and actually switch into the lens that you selected. Download the camera assistant if you want that benefit and feature. Again, I still got to give it to the Oppo Find X9 Pro in this particular one without night mode active when we're looking at the 6x and the 5x respectfully. Let's run it back between them now with night mode active. Now, of course, as you can see here, night mode makes a huge difference, especially on what you're seeing on the Samsung and especially on the iPhone. It's a night and day difference. You want to be using night mode with the ultra wide, with the iPhone and the Samsung. The iPhone really comes out good. I think it actually looks the best out of these three, and the fact that you're getting a much wider field of view perspective compared to all of them. I really like what I'm seeing on the iPhone, then the Oppo. And then what we're going into night mode for the main 1x sensor. Again, I prefer what I'm seeing on the iPhone than the Oppo, more because of the fact that it controls the highlights on my skin better compared to the Oppo. So the iPhone wins it, and it really makes a difference having night mode with the iPhone in this particular situation. Let's go over to the 2x crop mode. Again, detail is a little bit softer on the iPhone that I like the detail that I'm seeing on the Oppo, but the overall image, especially the controlled highlights on my skin, I keep emphasizing this. Oppo, you probably need to tune it and work it on there. And I do like the more contrasty image around my skin. It gives it much more of an accurate rendition and representation. I think whatever update that we have with iOS 26.1 is really working its magic here with the iPhone. So good luck, Apple, for this one. Now we're going to the 3x crop and zoom mode respectively. I don't know, the Samsung is just overpowered. It's just not really doing what it needs to be doing. It's definitely between the iPhone and Oppo. I would say in this particular situation, it is the Oppo that takes it. I do like the overall colors, but on the iPhone, but again, it's the Oppo that takes it in this one. It just looks really, really, really good. Now, let's go into the 4x zoom mode, which is favoring optically on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the iPhone really balances it well, but the clarity that you get on the Oppo is just so good with night mode. And yeah, the S25 Ultra just looks washed out and overpowered. Again, the tuning and the processing there, not looking great on the Samsung, unfortunately. Now, let's go into the 6x crop and zoom mode. Again, things just look really good on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, things do improve on the S25 Ultra, but it just looks so cartoony and not good at all. It really just does fall apart. So that's quite disappointing from Samsung. I like what I'm seeing on the Oppo and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Let's run it back again one more time with flash applicable on all of them. And with the iPhone 17 Pro Max, you can see that the flash performance is really powerful. And when you're experiencing it in real time, it really pulsates and flashes. This is one of the things that Apple really do well, but the end result, I don't know, it's yet to be desired. I still prefer night mode with the ultra wide. It looks a bit mucky, in my opinion. Very well balanced on the S25 Ultra and quite overpowered on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. I think the Oppo is doing extra processing on top, which I don't think it really needs to do that. I think it just needs to let the flash do everything and just keep it that way. So that's something to be considered. And the same thing happens when we go. I think the Oppo is just doing a bit more processing on top of the flash, which it shouldn't do. The iPhone 17 Pro Max definitely takes this one, then followed by the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, going into the 2x crop mode, again, really balanced out well on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Again, a bit of red eyeing that's happening on the iPhone, a bit more compared to the others. And I just feel like the Oppo is doing additional processing on top of the flash, and it does not need to do that. It just needs to let the processing die back and let the flash do its thing. So iPhone, Samsung, then Oppo. Now, when we go into the 3x zoom mode with the flash, this is a tough one. I would say maybe the iPhone, but again, because it's doing a crop of the main sensor, it doesn't really look that sharp. But again, the illumination is overall very good. The colors are all over the place on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, but again, the sharpness and the detail is there because that 3x is really powerful. I think Oppo, you just need to dial back the process and just let the flash do its thing. The S25 Ultra, I just don't think is really in the game, in my personal opinion. Let's go to the 4x crop mode. Again, consistent as we go through. Overall, you're seeing a bit more red eye. And again, there's just more grain and noise on the iPhone 17 Pro Max's images, which you're not getting on the Oppo. But the Oppo doing extra processing, it's making the artifacting on the colors around the image and on myself just too much. So I don't know, I'm not really vibing with any of them. Let me know which one you prefer for the 4x crop and zoom with the flash in the comment section below. Now, going to the 6x zoom and crop mode. Funny enough, with the 5x, it is kind of balanced on the S25 Ultra. There isn't much illumination there. And again, so much grain and noise on what we're seeing on the iPhone, unfortunately. But yeah, I can't really pick the Oppo. I just don't like the extra processing layer that's happening with the flash. It's not needed, and they really need to tune it and dial it back. So Oppo, if you're watching and listening, definitely dial back the processing when using the flash. Let the flash do its thing, and it's going to be fine. Balance out the colors. You're really good at that, and you're all good. Let's move over to some portrait mode images, and instantly, I love what I'm seeing on the Oppo. This is without night mode or flash active. We're going to run it back 3 times and see some of the caveats that we get compared to the other systems across the board. Yeah, Oppo 1x portrait mode, it just looks good. The edge detection, the gaps in between my arm, the colors, the detail, the sharpness. Chef's kiss. I love what I'm seeing here on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, let's go over to the 2x crop mode. Again, things stay consistent. The portrait mode performance is great on all of them. They're all three actually, sorry, not both. All three get the gaps in between my arms, the edge detection around my ears, my hoodie, my head, my beard. Really good. No issues, but overall the image, I really like what I'm seeing on the Oppo. But again, consideration, the highlight control on the skin is really nice on the iPhone, so I've got to give iPhone props for that. Now, when we go into the 3x and the 4x zoom modes, respectfully, things are very grainy on the S25 Ultra, but if we're judging the portrait mode performance with the gaps in between my arms, the edge detection, it does really good, so there's no disappointment there. Overall though, You ain't touching what you're seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, and the 4x zoom in portrait mode for the iPhone 17 Pro Max. It just didn't work. It really didn't work. There's barely any blur. There's some, but it's nowhere near the level of what we're seeing on the other two. Oppo walks away with this one. Of course, you've got the 5x portrait mode option without night mode. Again, it kind of worked, but you do need a bit more luminance and light and night mode here, which we're going to pretty much see. Now, talking about this, the iPhone no longer allows you to do night mode and portrait mode together. Now, bearing in mind, the previous generations, with all the camera comparisons I've done over the years, they only ever allowed you to do night mode and portrait mode together on the 1x sensor. You couldn't do it in 2x. You couldn't do it on a dedicated telephoto, whether it's the 3x, 4x, or the 5x, or whichever one it was for whatever generation. It doesn't give you that option anymore. So this is technically a step back in night mode and portrait mode performance together for an iPhone, which is disappointment. We always want to see an improvement and additional features. Maybe they saw the telemetry that no one's using it, they didn't see the benefit, but I disagree. If it's a Pro Max or Pro phone, give us these features. The Oppo doesn't give you a night mode option at all when it comes to using portrait mode, but you see, you could make the argument that it probably doesn't need it. And I'm quite shocked by this because, again, praise where praise is due. The Galaxy S25 Ultra does allow you to use night mode and portrait mode together in all the modes at 1x, 2x, 3x, and 5x. So technically, you've got to give it props. But if you're comparing the two, I would still say I prefer the Oppo. Crazy, right? Of course, there is an improvement with the Samsung, but I still prefer what I'm seeing on the Oppo. And same goes for the 2X. Yes, you can use night mode and 2X together on the Samsung. Praise to it for technically allowing you to do that. The Oppo still looks better in my opinion, personally. So unless I'm wrong and something's wrong with my eyes, let me know in the comment section below. We go to the 3X again. Oppo still looks better. Honestly, this 3x 10 megapixels on the S25 Ultra, it really needs to go. We need to get rid of it, Samsung. It ain't doing a good job. But again, night mode mitigates and helps with that. So there's that consideration. 5x, again, improvement with the portrait mode and night mode together really helps, but it just looks so oily skinned and just cartoony. Yeah, technically it should win, but I'll be honest with you, Oppo looks like you don't really need night mode for portrait mode, so credit where credit's due. That's a good look. Let's run it back one more time with the portrait mode with the flash applicable. And of course, in this particular situation, all of them do a great job. The blur look on the Galaxy S25 Ultra does look very pleasing, but the overall look of the image, I like what I'm seeing on the Oppo and the iPhone. We're going to the 2x mode in this particular situation. Again, the extra processing is not as bad in portrait mode with flash active on the Oppo, so that's great to see. But again, the control of the highlights on the skin, not as good as what we're seeing on the iPhone, but of course the iPhone doesn't look as detailed. So yeah, take into consideration, I like the overall look of the Oppo, but that's just in consideration to just the overall pick. But if you disagree, let me know in the comment section below, we can discuss that. Now 3x with the flash applicable, even in a 4x for the iPhone, too much noise and grain, it doesn't look good with the flash, so miss that. Overall, it's the Oppo Find X9 Pro that takes all the way through. There's a lot of red eyeing that you've seen on the S25 Ultra. Honestly, this 3x 10 megapixel sensor really frustrates me, and it shows how outdated it's getting come the tail end of 2025. Now 5x, again, slight improvement there on the Samsung with the flash, but again, doesn't really do all that much, so take that into consideration and work with it. I think overall, with the flash and portrait, yep, it's the Oppo for me. Let's flip to the front-facing camera, look at some selfies in low light between these flagship devices. And again, we're going to run it where we can without night mode, and flash where applicable, with and also without portrait mode. Let's start without portrait mode and without night mode active, and it is the Oppo Find X9 Pro that takes it. Now, there is better illuminance and light when it comes to the S25 Ultra, but again, the field of view compared to what we're seeing on the iPhone and the Oppo is not as good. The Oppo just strikes the balance really well between the two. I like the Oppo here without night mode. Now, when night mode is active, the Oppo doesn't do much. It really doesn't do much. It's so subtle way. It basically just doesn't do anything. So Oppo, take that into consideration in terms of your processing, but it kind of looks all right to what the night looks like. Things really do boost up when it comes to night mode on the iPhone 17 Pro Max and S25 Ultra. The iPhone really benefits from it well in this particular situation. So you could easily go iPhone, Oppo, then S25 Ultra. But with night mode actually visibly working, you could go iPhone, S25 Ultra, and then Oppo last. So let me know which order you would pick. Now, Flash active, all of them do a decently good job. I actually prefer what I'm seeing with the front screen flash with the S25 Ultra, then followed by the Oppo, then followed by the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Now, let's do portrait mode. Again, I did use the dedicated portrait mode image shot for the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Again, I wouldn't recommend it. Change it to a portrait mode image after, or if you're doing a normal picture and you see the f-stop icon come on, press that, you get all the resolution in the field of view. So again, take that into consideration. In this particular situation here, all of them still do a decent job. I'll definitely give it to the Oppo. It just looks the best out of all of them. Now, credit where credit's due, Samsung still is the only one that allows you to do portrait mode with night mode and selfie at the same time. The others don't. So I have to give it to the Galaxy S25 Ultra for this particular one. But again, you could make the argument that the Oppo doesn't need night mode, but let's give it to Samsung. It allows you to do all of those modes together. Front screen flash with portrait mode active. The iPhone just does not look great, so let's forget that one. It is between the Oppo and the Samsung. I would say the Samsung in this particular one, but I don't know, the edge detection around my head looks like it's chopped a bit of my head off, so I kind of have to duck points on there. I like the overall look of the colors, but the portrait mode performance with the front screen flash has got to go to Oppo on this particular one. Last set of low light images with the landscape ones, and this one is going to be without night mode and night mode active. Flash is not going to be applicable, so it's going to be a bit of a quicker one. Of course, I still keep giving praise to the iPhone for having a wider field of view, but without night mode active on the ultra wide, it suffers. It needs night mode. I've got to give it to the Oppo for this one. It just smashes it compared to the other two, so really good job here, Oppo. Let's go to the 1x main wide sensor. All of them recover and do well. Again, I would say that the highlights overall for the overall image is quite high on the Oppo. Maybe it needs to be dialed back a little bit. I do like what I'm seeing on the Samsung and the iPhone. Let's go to the 2x crop mode, focusing on the sign in the middle with the no entry between 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. except for buses and cycles with the left arrow. And of course, what I'm seeing with the Oppo and the Samsung are what I'm preferring out of the two, which is great. But you might prefer the more nighttime look of what we're seeing on the iPhone, but it doesn't look as detailed. Let's go to the 3x zoom and crop mode respectfully. Oppo all the way. The Samsung, again, just falls apart and further emphasizes why this 10x 3x 10 megapixel sensor just needs to go. Anyway, Oppo all the way wins this particular one. Let's go to the 4x crop and zoom mode. And in this particular situation, again, things optically favor a bit more of what we're seeing on the iPhone, but I still think it's not really activating the 4x. You've got no control. Apple, you do need to give a control over what does happen when it comes to the lens switching. We really need that to be happening. So let's give it to the Oppo for this particular one. Let's go to the 5x crop and zoom mode respectfully. And of course, again, the Oppo is still holding up great. It's my preferred one. I'm really liking it. And of course, 6x again, that is still looking good on the Oppo without night mode. Oppo, in my opinion, takes it all the way. Let's now switch it back. Let's activate night mode. And night mode, again, as emphasized, you need it on the ultra wide. It makes such a huge difference on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. So great improvement here. Of course, the balance of what we're seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro is great, but I do like what I'm seeing on the S25 Ultra. So I'm going to give it to the S25 Ultra on this particular one. Let's go to the 1x mode. And as we're pretty much going through, again, no qualms, no beef on all of them. All of them are doing a great job. Now, I would say maybe the iPhone overpowers the street lights a bit more, whereas the Oppo balances it better. So maybe picking hairs, we're going to give it to the Oppo for this one. Let's go to the 2x crop mode. And again, great balance. Things overpower a bit on the Samsung, but it is an improvement. So give it credit for that. But I do like what I'm seeing on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, let's go to the 3x mode. And again, Oppo for this one can't be touched. That 3x 200 megapixel sensor is just fantastic. I love it. And, you know, yes, I do kind of in some ways had a consideration to the previous Find X8 Pro configuration of a 3x 50 megapixel and a 6x 50 megapixels. But if you're going to sacrifice it, this is how you do it. One 3x or 4x that is super large, high resolution, and yeah, it's doing a great job to really power through. In the 4x mode for the night mode, we are still seeing the Oppo take it. Yeah, it should favor the iPhone, but it's the Oppo for me on this particular one. We go to the 5X. Again, for me personally, what Oppo are doing here in terms of the detail and the performance of night mode, it's working the best. And when we go to the 6X mode, again, it is still the Oppo Find X9 Pro. So with these landscape low light images, without me in the frame as the subject, looking at the signs and the overall night mode image and scenery, it is the Oppo without night mode and with night mode that takes the win. Now that we've analyzed all the pictures and videos for daylight and and low light, is now time to go through the video. Now, the best way to watch this section of the camera comparison is at the highest resolution at 4K and at 60 FPS on the largest display possible with headphones or earphones on so you can hear the audio switching between the devices. There will be chapters linked in the description below, but definitely sit back, relax, grab your meal, grab your popcorn, grab your drinks, because this will be a detailed one.
We are now recording in the 4K UHD 60 frames a second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, detail, colors, dynamic range, and of course, video stabilization. Let's do a quick run. We're now recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode on Oppo Find X9 Pro, S25 Ultra, and iPhone 17 Pro Max. Again, we're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, detail, colors, dynamic range, and of course, video stabilization. Let's do a quick run. We're still recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode on a selfie camera with Oppo Find X9 Pro, S25 Ultra, and iPhone 17 Pro Max. We're in the respective video portrait mode, which is cinematic on the iPhone video portrait mode, and the f-stop button on the standard video mode on the bottom left on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Good news, Oppo Find X9 Pro now does this in what looks like 4K 30 frames a second. Love this. And here's a couple of tricks that we're seeing, right? With the iPhone, you can't pause and you can't take pictures on the same clip. With the Samsung, you can't take pictures on the same clip, but you can pause and continue. The Oppo has the most flexible system now. You can take pictures at the same time in video portrait mode. First camera system I've seen do that. You can pause recording, but guess what? You can flip to the back camera while recording. That's insane. And it's back to me in video portrait mode. Ah, yes, Oppo. You now have the best flexible camera system for video portrait mode. That is impressive. I've got to give you your flowers on that one. It's even better than Samsung's. We are now recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode on Oppo Find X9 Pro, Galaxy S25 Ultra, and iPhone 17 Pro Max. We're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, detail, colors, dynamic range, and of course, video stabilization. Let's do a quick run. Let's now switch to the ultra wide. All of them do allow you to switch between the rear lenses without stopping recording. Let's do a quick run. Let's go to 2x. Slow walk. 3x, which optically favors what we're seeing on the Oppo and the Samsung. Digital crop still on the 1x on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and 3x now. Let's go to 4x, which should optically favor what we're seeing on the iPhone. Slight digital crop on the Samsung and the Oppo. X. 5x. We're going to do 6x, but that is still doing a digital crop on the Oppo. I'm going to crop any more on the others. Okay, doke. Let's go back to 1x. 1x. Here's just a couple of things to take into considerations. All these cameras, as you can see, do allow you to switch between all the rear lenses while recording on the same clip. You can take pictures and also pause the video while recording on the same clip. But two things. The Samsung and the Oppo are the only camera system that allow you to switch to the front-facing camera while recording on the same clip. Now, this is something Samsung have been doing well over the years.
but it's so good to see Oppo do this. This is a level of flexibility that I have to praise every company that does this. Apple, you're still behind. I know you have dual capture, but being able to flip to the same camera lens at the front and back to the rear cameras while still taking pictures, pause and record in the same clip is a great level of flexibility that should be on all flagship phones especially. So Oppo, well done for catching up. And Samsung, of course, you've been doing this for ages. I've got to give you your flowers. We are now recording in a 4K UHD 60 frames a second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, Galaxy S25 Ultra, iPhone 17 Pro Max. Again, we're just seeing how the image quality is like, sharpness, details, colors, dynamic range, and of course, video stabilization. Let's do a quick run. Again, we can switch to the ultra wide on all of them. We can switch between all the rear lenses without having to stop recording. Quick run again. Let's go to 2x. Working quickly, the sun is setting within the next hour. Need to get done. Slow walk. That's 2x. Let's go to 3x. So that's 6, 3. This should optically favor what we're seeing on the Oppo and the Samsung. Again, slow walk. X. Slow walk. And then when we switch to 5x, we are optically favoring what we're seeing. We'll just go to 6x on the Oppo. And then we're going to go back to the 1x. Again, same considerations in 4K 60. You can switch between all the rear lenses at the back, take pictures and pause recording on the same clip. But again, praise to Samsung and Oppo. You can flip to the front facing camera while recording on the same clip. This is something you cannot do on the iPhone. So again, Samsung has been doing this for years now. I've got to give them their flowers for really pioneering the usability of camera switching on these camera phones. Oppo, you've caught up. I'm really, really happy to see this. Can take pictures, you can pause on the same clip, flip back to the front facing camera as well as the rear cameras. This is fantastic. We are now recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recorder mode, specifically and only on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. The Oppo Find X9 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro Max are limited to a maximum of 4K resolution. And I will say this, it's not a deal breaker whether a phone has 8K recording or not. But I'm gonna honestly say it, it's kind of disappointing that the iPhone and the Oppo don't have any form of 8K. All these cameras have rear sensors that are high resolution. In fact, the Oppo has a 50 megapixel selfie, so technically it should be one of only few phones to be able to take 8K videos on a selfie camera. But here we are, we're still limited to 4K. Now, I don't think this has anything to do with the limitation of the Dimensity chipset that's in here. I just don't understand why there isn't any 8K recording on the iPhone and the Oppo. So this one, outright, Samsung wins it. Quick run. We're still recording in 8K 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the S25 Ultra, 4K 30 on the iPhone 17 Pro Max and Oppo Find X9 Pro. We're now doing this in the ultra wide. Again, flexibility here. All the high resolution sensors on the Samsung can record in 8K, except for the 10 megapixel 3x sensor, which I hope they abolish this 3x soon. Either upgrade the 3x to 50 megapixels so you can shoot 8K, or get rid of the 5x and the 3x, put a 4x in there. That's high resolution, large sensor size. But yeah, again, props to Samsung, man. Quick run. Still recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Samsung Galaxy S25 natively, max 4K 30 on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max, 4x optical telephoto on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, 3x on the Oppo Find X8 Pro, Find X9 Pro, 5x on a Samsung. And again, Samsung takes the win here. It just does. So we are now in their respective super steady mode, and of course that is the action mode on the iPhone, and then you've got the ultra steady on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, and then you've got the super steady on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Here's some interesting facts. Galaxy S25 Ultra can do this at 2.5K 1440p QHD up to 60 FPS. The iPhone 17 Pro Max can do this at 2.8K resolution up to 60 FPS. The Oppo can do this at 4K 60. That is insane. I feel like that's one of the only cameras I've seen that's able to do it at the full resolution. But let's see how good it is. We're starting with the ultra wide. Let's do a heavy run. Again, still in their respective super steady mode, action mode, and ultra steady mode. And we are in the 1X. Let's do a heavy run. Again, still in the same mode. We're now in the 2X, which is the maximum for the Galaxy S25 Ultra. So let's do that. Same modes, but now we are in the optical telephoto 4X on the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the optical telephoto 3X on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Again, with the Samsung, it is limited to 2X, and testing it and showing it, this is using optical zoom sensors on the iPhone and the Oppo, so that's really good. Let's do a fast run. We are now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We are so lucky. A sunny day in the UK at this time of the year. The sun is shining on me, sun is setting. It's pretty much 15 minutes past 5. We ain't got long. We're just seeing how the image quality is like on these smartphones with me in the frames as a subject, with the environment. We've got the autumn leaves and the changes of the colors in the background. We are not gonna get a better chance to see the image quality than this. I'm gonna walk close, just see how the image quality is like, the autofocus and how it focuses on me, the color rendition around my skin, and also the audio quality as well. We're still recording in 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We've now switched to their respective ultra wide, which is 0.5 and a 0.6 respectively on the iPhone and the Oppo. So you should get a slightly wider field of view on the iPhone because it's 0.5 compared to 0.6 on the other two. Let's just see how the image quality is like, the sharpness detail with me in the frame as the subject. The sun is shining on me, the autumn leaves are around. Great day. Come close. And just see how the distortion is like, the focusing. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max, Galaxy S25 Ultra. We're now in their respective 2X mode. This is doing a digital process crop on the main 1X sensor. Again, let's just see how the image quality is like. We're not gonna get a better day like this in the UK with the sun shining, sun setting in the autumn. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max, and also that Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, this should optically favor the Oppo and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. The iPhone is still doing a crop on a 1X sensor at 3X. It hasn't hit the next optical stage at 4X yet. What's interesting here is this improvement to the 200 megapixel larger sensor 3X should have a better image quality than a Samsung, which is a 10 megapixel 3X and is a much smaller sensor. I really hope Samsung, if you're hearing me, the next S25 or S26 Ultra, or whatever you're gonna call it, upgrade this 3X, make it larger, make it 50 megapixels, or get rid of the 3X and the 5X, put a 4X, make it 50 megapixels, and make it larger like what you have on an iPhone. Right now, I do miss having 3 and 6x as optical sensors at 50 megapixels on the Oppo, but you know what? Let's see how the image quality is like. This could work out. We're still recording in a respective 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We are now in the 4x zoom mode. Now what that does is on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, we are now at the super telephoto at 4x. That should be giving the best image quality in theory. Now of course, because the Oppo Find X8, because the Oppo Find X9 Pro does have that new larger 200 megapixels at 3x, that slight zoom to 4x, you shouldn't be losing that much quality. It should still be comparable. Whereas you are still doing a slight crop on the 10 megapixel 3x on the S25 Ultra, that should have the least image quality. But really, let's see how it renders for all the image quality across the board. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Right now we are in the 5x optical zoom mode on the S25 Ultra, so that should favor the next telephoto, which is the 50 megapixel 5x. Slight crop again on the 3x on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, and a slight crop on the 4x on the iPhone 17 Pro Max. This is going to be interesting because with what they've actually sacrificed here with the other 6x on the Oppo, doing the 6x here in sensor cropping and 200 megapixel sensor at 3x, okay, let's see how it looks. Moment of truth. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We are now in their respective video portrait mode. This does the background blur effect in real time, and it's great to see all of them do have the ability to do this in 4K 30, but the Oppo has a trick up its sleeve which makes me so happy and really tells me that they are listening. But this is the 1x mode. We're still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode in their respective cinematic and video portrait mode background blur effect. We're now in the 2x mode, and this is on the Oppo Find X8 Pro. Find X8, why do I keep saying that? The Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. With the 2x crop, it is doing a digital process crop on a 1x sensor. Let's see how the image quality is like. We are racing against the sun. We need the sun on us, so let's see. We're still recording in their respective video portrait mode on a Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. If you couldn't tell the massive smile on my face, Oppo, you are using the 3x dedicated 200 megapixel sensor and lens to do video portrait mode. I cannot overstate how big of a deal it is. If you're looking at the iPhone and the Samsung, they are still doing a crop in 3x. Now for the iPhone, I almost forgive it because it doesn't have a 3x. The Samsung has a dedicated 3x 10 megapixel sensor and lens and a 5x. The iPhone has a 4x. You still cannot use them for video portrait mode. The Oppo, you can. And it's in 4K 30. This is such an improvement from the last generation sets. Wow, this is the best video portrait mode experience I've seen on any camera. And the 6x option, which obviously is doing an in-sensor crop. But you can use the 3x dedicated telephoto zoom. I'm mic drop. Oppo, you've won this one. Bravo. We are now recording in the 8K 30 frames per second video recorder mode, respectively and natively on the Galaxy S25 Ultra. And of course, the Oppo and the iPhone are limited to 4K 30. I want to emphasize again, it is not the end of the world if your flagship phone cannot shoot in 8K video. But damn, Oppo, you have done everything to show how much you've improved this platform with this Dimensity 9500 chipset and these new cameras. Why have we not got 8K? They're all high resolution, even a selfie. I would have loved to see 8K on the front-facing camera, 8K on all the cameras for the ultra-wide, the 1X, and the 3X zoom. And this same goes to iPhone as well. All the rear cameras are 48 megapixels. That's more than enough for 8K. So yeah, Samsung, you win this one. 8K natively built in. It's a good look. We're now still recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode. It's exactly 5:41. The sun is escaping. I could just see it dipping. But of course, we are in their logarithmic profile, the log mode, the flat color profile. And we have that supported on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Look, I'm gonna leave these mistakes in. I'm running out of time. Here's a few caveats. Now with the Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max, you can do this, but you have to record it in ProRes. You cannot do this in a standard MP4 H.265 HEVC mode. You can do that on the Samsung. So you've got a standard recording profile in log. So that is really, really good. What's interesting is with the Oppo, you have to go into the Pro video mode to get the log feature. In the standard video mode, the log feature doesn't show up. You have to go into the Pro video mode. But here's some few benefits that you get. You can do this in 4K 60. Yes, we're recording in 4K 30. Time is running out. You can do this in 4K 60, and you can do this in 4K 120 and record log. That is insane. The benefits here are just unmatched. And of course, you've got that level of flexibility on the Samsung as well. 4K 60, not 4K 120 in log, but you can do log in 8K 30. So again, more flexibility there. With the iPhone, if you want to do log in 4K 60, you have to record to external SSD with the USB-C drive, and that will give you the 4K 60 option. You cannot do it natively. So just a few things to consider. Of course, with these Pro and Ultra level phones, there is so many things to consider, but yeah, hope you are following along. I wanted to showcase the log feature. And obviously what's good is you can color space transform natively on the camera app with the Oppo Find X9 Pro in a Pro mode, and that is either in the Rec 709 standard SDR or of course in a HDR hybrid log camera HLG. I love this. And with the Samsung, you can do this as well in the Gallery app once you can actually transform to SDR natively. I don't think you can do this on the iPhone natively in the Photos app. I think you can do it in a third-party application. But regardless, this is pro level, ultra level kind of performance for the video. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We're just seeing how the low light performance is like, with me in the frame as the subject on the main 1X. Let's see how the low light performance and the image quality is like. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second, but we are in their respective video portrait mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Of course, they are still in 4K 30, which is what we love to see. This is a challenger one. Usually the iPhone struggles at low light for video portrait mode. It will ask for more light. Samsung tends to do quite well in this situation, but it can be a bit of a hit and a miss. And Oppo being the new phone, let's see how it performs for low light. We're now recording in the 4K UHD 30 frames a second video recorder mode on the Oppo Find X9 Pro, Galaxy S25 Ultra, iPhone 17 Pro Max. Again, we're just seeing how the low light performance is like. Raising it to see the flares and the street lamps. Let's switch to the ultra wide. Let's go to 2x. And we are going to go to 3, 4x, 3x. So that's 4x on the iPhone, 3x on the Oppo, 3x on the Samsung. Then we're going to go 5x on the Samsung. 6x. I'm just going to go 8x on the iPhone. So we're just going to stick to the focal lengths that they have. and 10x on a Samsung. One X. We're still recording in a 4K UHD 30 frames per second video recorder mode on a selfie camera for the Oppo Find X9 Pro, Galaxy S25 Ultra, and iPhone 17 Pro Max. What we are doing is the video portrait mode with the background blur, and it seems to be working well on the Oppo and the Samsung, and of course the iPhone is asking for more light, as it does struggle in this situation.
Now that is it with this definitive camera comparison between the Oppo Find X9 Pro, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I know this is a detailed one, so if you did make it to the end, be sure to put a fist bump emoji in there so I know you're a real one. If you did, really appreciate your support, and of course do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn the notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And there's this whole new thing about hype points. Give me some hype points in the comments. Let's get this video up into the algorithm for people to see. So yeah, really appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, what you thought. And that's it for me, Ben from Lover of Tech. If you enjoyed this video, you know exactly what to do. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're part of Team TLS, the Tech Lover Squad, so you don't miss any future videos on the channel. I hope you're all safe during this time. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.